interesting one. Thicker around the rim. What am I spinning today? I am spinning Weezer. So Weezer is a band that you guys have probably already heard of a million times. I heard Weezer probably back in 1994, 95. It was more than likely the Sweater Song, because that got overplayed on all the radio stations. I don't know, man. There was just something kind of different about it. Back in like 94, I was very anti-grunge. It was one of those things where it was just, everybody was just like, oh my gosh, have you guys heard Nirvana? This is like a hot take and y'all are going to hate me for it. But I didn't feel like he was the John Lennon of our times. I felt like he was the Kurt Cobain of our generation. And that John Lennon was the John Lennon and Kurt was his own thing. So, I mean, it's a compliment. I get it, but, whatever. I got this information from Wikipedia, Music Brains, and Discogs. Those are some really sweet resources if you're just looking for information about like what studio and what engineer made something that you like. They actually formed in 1992. I didn't know that until I started looking into this. And it makes sense because in the Wikipedia blurb about them, they talk about how they had a hard time connecting with audiences. And I think if you were to talk to them today, with all the fame and everything else that they've got, they probably still feel a little bit like that. So I'm listening to the Blue album. It's actually self-titled, but it's just kind of known as the Blue album. I'm kind of a big fan of the art style for this because it's just, four dudes standing in a row. And if you go on YouTube, you can actually find, have you heard of YouTube? I don't know. But if you have, you've got access to it. You can actually find a home video, from the studio, from the booth. And it's just them cutting up. They play a couple of songs. It's super blurry and grainy because it's like old VHS tape. And the studio has art in it that was copyrighted or obscene. I can't tell because they blurred it out. And the other fun thing about this is that with it being, blue like this, I think it'd be really easy to chroma key out and have fun with. Do like a South Park style, I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. The album itself actually comes with a poster. I mean, it's not like they couldn't do this with a CD, but it would be a tiny poster. It would unfold. I mean, they could have made this unfold into a square, but, no worries there. If this was in a CD, it probably would have unfolded into something about this size. The picture certainly doesn't look unfamiliar to me, but I've definitely never seen it this big. It's just kind of the lineup of all the gear. You got the drums, all the guitars, and the bass, and then even though it's not in the centerpiece is these giant amps that are behind each of the guitars. And if you've ever known a guitarist or a bass player, this kind of stuff is like they would set up in a lawn chair with a shotgun to protect it if there was a problem kind of stuff. And I'm sure that if you knew what you were looking at, you would probably pick some of these out and be like, holy cow, that's amazing. So they recorded their album at Electric Lady Studios in New York City back in 94-ish, and they had some kind of dynamite. They'd gotten the interest of DGC, Geffen Records, and they actually landed Rick Ocasek from the Cars to produce the album, and an engineer by the name of Chris Shaw. He's got over 400 credits for people like Vanessa Williams, Paula Abdul, and obviously nearly 400 others I haven't listed here. You can find all of this again on Wikipedia, Music Brains, and Discogs. So go to your heart's content. You're going to find somebody in that bingo card of credits that Chris Shaw has that you're just like, holy cow, this guy did that. And I think they ended up with something magical. As a matter of fact, like other than Pinkerton, I haven't really just sunk into one of their records to the same degree that I sunk into their self-titled album. It's just one of those albums that I could play from start to finish, which is kind of handy because it's a record. And one of the fun things about records, of course, is that you can't skip forward, skip back, or scrub around in the track. You kind of have to commit to listening to that. So that brings me to the next thing. Why this fascination with vinyl? I've been purchasing albums off and on probably for the last 10 to 15 years because I just knew at some point I would have a corner of a room that I could put a record player and some speakers in, and I wanted to have some of my favorite acts. And if you have ever gotten into vinyl, you've probably learned that when a record or a vinyl pressing is released, that's the cheapest it's going to be. They're only going to make a certain number of them. They may re-release them later. It's the kind of thing that if you get an earlier one, you're more proud of it and you cherish it a little bit more. And they're a little harder to get. I think I was looking, I can't remember which band it was, but I think it was like a drum and bass kind of electronic band that I've been listening to. And the album that I wanted was like $200 or $300 just for the 12-inch LP. That thing was probably like 15 or 20 bucks to start with. I don't know, maybe 30. There's a couple of bands out there that kind of start at 30, but that's okay because you get what you pay for with records because of the way they're made. They're PVC and they tend to be, they have them in kind of different weights, but the heavier and the thicker the album, obviously it's a little bit more expensive, but it's also going to last you a little bit longer and technically have a little bit of a higher quality sound to it and just feel cool when you heft it. So why records? I mean, first of all, it's like a physical thing that I can hold. I can't hold an MP3. I can hold an MP3 player, but that would be like saying I can hold a record player. Sure, you can. Why are you doing that? I've got all kinds of services already where I can listen to music, almost anything. I mean, there's some stuff you can't find. You have to have more than one to get access to all the things you want, or you could just have one giant expensive iTunes account. It's up to you. But I can do that in my car or, when I'm out and about. I'm just kidding, I don't jog. But you've got portable music on lock right now. It's super easy, and that's almost part of the problem. There's almost no commit when it comes to listening to music anymore. And some of that's probably just because I'm older, and I used to listen to the radio, and it was the kind of thing where you had to sit there for hours with a tape recorder handy if you wanted to have a copy of a track. I'm talking like before you had $10 burning a hole in your pocket where you could go buy a tape or you could buy a CD at some point. You had to actually wait for it and then record it. And then, of course, with stuff like tapes, you had to fast forward, rewind. There was a little work involved in it. It wasn't until CDs came out that it became very easy for you to just skip around. But even then, you had to commit to the album that you put in. A record is a kind of artifact. And as long as it's taken care of a little bit or a lot of bit, you got to be nice to them, they will still make music in 100 years. Record players they're complex machines, but in principle, they're simple enough that you could put one together. It may not sound like the one that I have sitting here, this Audio-Technica. This is a AT-LP 120 XBT USB. I mean, that just rolls off the tongue. It probably needs a cool name like Steve or something. In principle, you've got a stylus that vibrates, and that vibration actually gets converted into the sound that comes out of your speaker. But oddly enough, you could turn the speakers off, right, and just play the record player. And if you listen, you could hear tiny music, like you could hear tiny Weezer over here just rocking away, because it's just a mechanical process that's making the sound, and then electronics along the path here are converting it into something that gets amplified and played through the speakers. So this kind of technology is old, and it's older than me, it's older than most of you, and it's reliable enough and it's predictable enough that it was actually put on the Voyager spacecraft. That thing that nearly destroyed Earth in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There's actually an article or a resource up on the NASA website hosted by JPL where they give you a little bit more information about what's on the disc. On top of that, on the other side of the disc, you actually have some basic mathematical formulas to sort of symbolize to the rest of the universe that we understand the Pythagorean theorem or something. I don't know. It's fascinating. It's like a little piece of humanness, a little piece of the virus going out into space. So they took this 12-inch copper record, they coated it in gold, and they pressed or engraved, they probably had to carve into gold and copper, earth sounds and things like that, and mathematical equations, just to tell the rest of the universe that we're here, so that the aliens could, get this disc, work out that it's a record, figure out, go down to Best Buy and buy an Audio-Technica direct drive turntable, and then play Earth sounds, actually hear sounds from Earth, so that they could decide that we're dangerous and come get us. One of the other fun things that happens with LPs or with vinyl is that sometimes the artists actually take an interest and they hire an artist, like Linkin Park, for example, and they produce content to go along with the record that you can get a little bit of on a CD. Some records will have actual booklets with all the words in it. Some are pretty sparse, but another great example is this Beatles Rarity album. The back of the album actually has context for each of the songs, why it's so rare, which kind of draws attention to one of the other things about vinyl that I think, and this is going to make me sound even more like a hipster, but when you have a record, it's like a little snapshot in time. So when they press it and they send it out to you and it's sitting in your crate or in your carefully curated storage device of choice, there's nothing that can change or corrupt that music. So what you pull out of that sleeve is the same song that you put into that sleeve 10, 20, 30 years ago, the last time you listened to the record. Maybe it's 10 minutes, like my case. Sounds like a small thing, but these days, especially with digital distribution, the publishers can make decisions based on other factors in the world. They can be money related, politics related, all kinds of reasons, and they can actually reach into your devices and change those things. I'm not saying put your tinfoil hat on, but what I am saying, there is something stable and there's something reliable about a record or a physical artifact that you can continue to have as long as you need it. How I got here from the Beatles Rarities is that one of the tracks is actually listed as being, mono, meaning that it's not stereo. It's not even fake stereo like they used to do, but it is a mix of the song that would be harder to find today. If you go on to iTunes or Spotify, you may be able to find these older versions, but for the most part, they're going to be the digitally remastered. They're going to be re-EQ'd, and their dynamics are going to be kind of pushed into the modern space, which, if you're watching this video, is typically overcompressed and just kind of like a rectangle of sound. So records are going to bring you kind of the older mixing styles, the older engineering techniques, and they're going to retain some of the older dynamics. That may not be what you want to hear while you're driving to work or while you're running away from a dog trying to stay healthy. But if you're sitting in your armchair with the lights turned low and you're listening to your favorite jazz album, you definitely want to have those dynamics, and you want them to be the way that they were created by the engineer who produced the record, not somebody 10, 20, 30 years later who thinks they know sound science better. In some cases, they might. In some cases, the album needed the help. Outside of the artifact that is the record, you've got this machine sitting here that plays. It's like an instrument, right? It's almost like the record plays the record player. It plays the stylus. Almost like those old pianos that had a drum that turned and then it would plink the keys as the little pegs went by on the drum. And that's one of the things that makes records a little bit magical, is the fact that it is like having an instrument that plays itself, and it's a kind of amazing when you think about it, because it reproduces such realistic sounds. It gives you a whole lot of parameters. I've got a direct drive table. There's nothing wrong with a belt-driven record player. As a matter of fact, most of the record players you find out there are going to be belt-driven. You've got a tone arm here that comes across and it attaches to the stylus here on the end through kind of a cartridge. If you look at this thing, you can actually see that it's got all these wires and screws and things like that. And if you're technically inclined or you are a vinyl purist, you're probably going to want to get in the weeds here and learn how to maintain, modify, and improve on these designs. Me, who kind of dips in and out, I love the fact that you can buy a cartridge that just screws on or attaches to the end of this tone arm, making it very simple to change and maintain. As a matter of fact, this little green bit at the bottom is actually where the stylus is. That detaches, and you can replace and purchase just that. Now, you can make it rain here. You can spend more money than you have. There's people out there who are making payments on some of the pieces that I just called out. So I believe these, are around the $100 price range if you want to replace, just that piece. I have seen these for other turntables north of $500, $600 to replace that. I'm sure you get what you pay for in this space, whether it's style and appearance or it's the technical quality that makes it sound better. There is room to spend. You follow this tone arm back, you've actually got a couple of more parameters. If you're a software person, these are like, drop down boxes, except they're analog. You have to deal with them in person with your hands. So you've got the balance for this arm. You want to almost make it float on the surface of the record. You don't want it to press down too hard. You don't want it to bounce up too much, or you get a lot of skipping. That's actually something you can configure back here in the back. And the styluses that you get for it will tell you how much pressure needs to be put on the record. Aside from that, you have the tracking control. The gist of it is that the record itself is pressing the needle towards the center as it goes, because it's just a spiral groove in the record player. And the tracking allows you to sort of fine-tune that so that you're putting the right amount of pressure on each side of the groove. This is important because that's where the stereo comes from. There's a whole bunch of math happening behind the scenes here. The record player is figuring out which of the sounds is on the left side, the right side, and in the middle. Not getting these settings just right means that you're going to have a little variation there, just like a real instrument. These are the ways that you sort of get that record player optimized. So once you've got that part figured out, you take the audio from this. There's the red and white cables that come out of the back. Fancier record players may have some sort of built-in amplification that you can run out. But either way, typically what you do is you run that out to an amplifier of some kind. But the signal coming from the record player is still very faint and very quiet and needs additional amplification. But that's what the amplifier does. It takes the weaker, quieter signal, makes it loud enough to push into some speakers. Now, in my case, these speakers have the amp built in. There's Bluetooth all over the place over here, so as hipstery as I am, there's still plenty of opportunities here to use your Bluetooth earbuds. All of that to say, you can go nuts here, and there are infinite variations. One of my favorite scenes in Bosch, if you guys have watched that television series. Bosch is a huge fan of jazz music. He obviously has a lot of bootlegs and things like that around, but he likes to sit down after a hard case, crack open a cold one, and listen to his favorite jazz musicians on his turntable, and it's featured in several scenes. And you'll notice that he not only has what I talked about, a turntable connected to an amp, but he has a sort of preamp in the mix that is a tube, a tube compressor or a tube amplification for the music. So there's additional components you can put in line here. My point is that the important thing, if you're interested in vinyl, is just to get what you need to start listening. You can always upgrade over time. I spent some time, and I got a turntable that had direct drive because I was just sick and tired of having to replace belts. I didn't get it so I could DJ. I got it so I wouldn't have to replace as much of it. This one also has a digital amplifier built in, so I can plug it directly into a laptop and make my archives. I definitely want to get into some of those details and go through the process of balancing the tone arm and setting the pressure on the tone arm and setting the tracking exactly right. It's not very difficult. It's just, if you're new to it, it can be a little daunting. Again, there's even stuff you could buy to help you with that. They make specialized scales. You can set the stylus on and it will measure the exact pressure that it's pressing down, and you can really dial that in. I think if you'd spent $40,000 on your setup, that's probably the way you'd want to go, just to get it exactly right. Because remember, you're not just protecting the stylus and the equipment, you're also protecting the vinyl. All right, so I want to get into all that, but not today. I'll probably sit down and do some additional videos to walk through those. So stick around. Who knows? Maybe there'll be another video about balancing the tone arm. But you can't wait for that. I know I can't. Woo! So for now, I'll just leave you with a little warning about hipsters to sort of tide you over till the next time we get together. Hopefully you enjoy it. Until then.
What's this? The year is 1942. Steam-powered hammers have been in common use for almost 100 years, and yet this small set of otherwise fit and able laborers insist on using man-powered hammers to secure and fasten their rivets. Where did we go wrong? They say that steam-powered tools make their efforts hollow and lifeless and favor a job well done by hand.